Welcome to Level Up with Winnie Sun.
Well, happy Wednesday, and thank you so much for joining us again. Welcome back to the show. Happy Wednesday to you. I guess it's the middle of the week. Some people call it the hump day, but either way, we're glad that you're here. And if you're joining us on the replay, a big hello to you as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you here with us, and our friends at Modern Mom, great to see you as well. Let's start with the market, let you know how it closed. Now, the Dow closed up 16 points, the Nasdaq down 9, and the S&P up 6. Pretty quiet. It was an interesting day in the financial markets today. Many of the tech stocks continued their gains, and several airline and cruise line stocks edged up just a bit higher, but overall still a pretty cautious day, as many of us continue to be waiting to see how soon we can be back to being fully open and truly enjoying a recovered economy. Here in the California, in fact, they're saying that, things actually might be turning and becoming completely open right around Father's Day, in fact. So things are poised to get a lot more expensive for businesses. And President Joe Biden's proposed $2 trillion infrastructure proposal plan is planned actually to be paid in part by hiking up corporate taxes. Now, I know a lot of business owners are saying, we pay already so much in taxes. Well, it's about to get a little bit more expensive. The Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen today said that corporate tax collections actually have fallen in their lowest level since World War II, in part due to the Republicans' 2017 Tax Cut and Jobs Act. She also added that this law not only collected less taxes, but actually had an additional adverse effect of sending workers and profits abroad. So as you would have guessed, other countries, to compete with the United States, lowered their corporate tax rates in response to attract businesses abroad. So let's talk about business, and most of all, how we can continue to market our businesses to help you attract more customers and sales and continue to build your corporate and personal brand. How do we best market ourselves? And you've heard about traditional sales, from the dreaded cold calling to spamming in your LinkedIn direct message. What about social media? And how do you create, monitor, and then evolve your content to continue to stay relevant and continue to grow your brand and business? Well, don't worry, you're in luck, because joining me today is the one and only Mike Alton, content marketing practitioner, brand evangelist for Agora Pulse, author, award-winning social media powerhouse, awesomeness guru, blogger, and who is pretty fluent in Star Wars. Hashtag blogging brute. And by the way, you've heard me say this before, but I just have to, this is my hashtag for him. Literally nicest guy ever on social media. Just such a sweetheart. So Mike, welcome to the show. How are you? Welcome back, in fact.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me, Winnie. I was really excited to see, in fact, Governor Newsom's announcement yesterday that your state may be fully opened within a couple months, because that means we can go back to La Crema this summer.
That would be super awesome. I'm sure La Crema will be very, very excited. For those of you who haven't heard of Crema, Crema is this incredible bakery here in Southern California. They have a location, I think, in Long Beach, Seal Beach area, but the owner's also a dear friend of mine. And Mike here that you've met here, as well as Stephanie Liu, who you've seen before. I believe Stephanie's going to be joining us tomorrow. But we all, and several of our other friends, we all went to Crema Bakery's top secret headquarters, secret bakery. And let's just say they spoiled us with really amazing calories, by the way. Mike, I feel like that you're exactly right. We need to recreate that soon.
Yeah. I got to sample them at your dinner party at Social Media Marketing World. So I need that behind the scenes secret look.
You need to behind the scenes. I apologize. We need to, Stephanie was with me. Mike, you're always in mind. We're always thinking of you. But yes, we would love to have you back, and that'd be so much fun. We're going to talk about content creation, Mike. And this is an area, to be honest with you, I definitely would not consider myself an expert in this area. I consider myself a work in progress. And luckily, I have friends like you who I get to rely on and learn from. And today you led our tweet chat on the subject, on this topic. And I will tell you that, let's see, where is it actually? I stopped away my notepad. Okay. So basically I took pages and pages of notes of what you and Stephanie shared today, and that's on top of the post-its, by the way. So much good information. I think many businesses were hearing the information about how corporate taxes are probably going to be going higher here, right? No doubt in some shape or form. But we continue to need to grow our business, especially with the pandemic. So much has changed for so many of us. And maybe you could talk about that in your own business, your own relationships. I know you work with a lot of different partners. Have you had to change? And maybe, I'm sure you have, and maybe some of the ways that you had to change during this time.
Yeah, there's definitely been some adjustments and some changes. The one thing that I'd like to talk about and remind businesses is that when we're talking about creating content, we're talking about something that will last over time. It's not going to stop working for us the moment we turn our attention to something else. And a good contrast to that are paid advertisements, right? Where if you're investing in Facebook ads or something like that, the moment you stop paying for those ads, they go away and they stop driving business for us. But if you're doing live video, right, that video exists on the social platforms in perpetuity, essentially. It goes out to YouTube. You can turn it into blog content. It exists on our own site, on our own properties, and that will continue to drive traffic, leads, and sales for us over time. So I like to frame all these conversations with that perspective, because I know a lot of businesses hear me say, oh, I need to create blog content, and I don't want to do that, right? Because Mike told me to write, that doesn't mean I want to, and I understand that, but it's an investment in our businesses. And when we're talking about taxes potentially increases, costs are going up for sure in a lot of different ways. Gas is rising back up. So, any kind of transit expenses, those are going up. Travel expenses are resuming and going back up, right? So maybe we don't want to invest so much in traditional advertising. Those digital marketing advertising avenues are available to us. So that's one of the pivots for some of us in a mindset, is investing in our own marketing, our own business in that way, investing time instead of dollars. Another thing that's changed over the past year or so is the ways that we use influencers. Many traditional kind of brick and mortar businesses might have used influencers who were able to be present, right, on the property, whether it's a travel property or a retail property, something like that. Obviously, a lot of that went away over the past 12 months. So we had to be a little more creative in how we used influencers and influencer marketing. But interestingly, influencer marketing as an industry, as a technique, has actually grown over the past 12 months. So that's something we're going to want to continue to look into and invest and lean into, people who can speak on behalf of our brands. So it's not just ourselves speaking for ourselves all the time.
Absolutely, Mike. I think that's a great point. I think I've certainly seen that in my own world, that certainly there's been a lot more interest in partnering and having that third party endorsement, right? Having a true professional expert in your industry come and talk about your company, who's not an employee, who's not on the payroll for your company, gives a lot of third party credibility and certainly helps with that message. I've done a lot of that work, and I agree with you. I do think that's actually on the uptick. And like you said, it's not a new thing. Maybe when you look at in comparison to cold calling or spamming, you might think it's new, but actually, the use of influencer marketing has been around for a very long time, and the market seems to only be getting larger. There was a quote that came out from my friend Lee Alton, which I loved, and that is that content isn't king, it's the kingdom. Mike, what do you think about that? Agree, disagree?
Oh, totally agree. Lee's very, very clever individual, and I would say that he's totally correct in that regard, because content can take a variety of forms. You mentioned how influencer marketing has been around for a long time, and that's so true. One of the first examples that we have dates back over 100 years to the Conklin Pen Company out of Toledo, Ohio, that paid Mark Twain to endorse their pens. And up until then, really just was athletes who were kind of talking about products, and it really never made sense for them to talk about a pen, like Babe Ruth talking about a pen. That doesn't make sense. But to have Mark Twain, who's known for the quiet quill, let's have him talk about our pen, right? So they put his name on their pen. They exacted some quotes from him about how the pen is so great and it doesn't even roll off the desk, so it saves you from swearing, which is pretty funny. So influencer marketing has been around for a long time. And like Leah said, that's just one form, or what he implied, that's just one form of content. Influencers, we have live video like we're doing today. We have long form blog content, which is what I specialize in, short form social media content, audio content, not just podcasts, but this growing rage of what we would call social audio on Clubhouse, and then Twitter Spaces, and then eventually LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. They'll all have some form of audio room, right? Those are just different kinds of content. So to say that it's the king, yeah, that's not really accurate anymore. To say it's the kingdom, love it.
Love it, right? I completely agree with you. And on that note, I should mention too, yeah, I've been very active on Twitter Spaces and plan to be going active later this afternoon and implementing Wednesdays and Fridays. I plan to be on Twitter Spaces. So if you want to join the conversation, would love to have you there as well. So businesses, have learned that you need to change your marketing strategy as the social and political environment shifts. In fact, 94% of content marketers changed their strategy in 2020 in a recent survey as a direct result of the pandemic, which significantly forced them to reshuffle their messaging approach and adjusted their editorial calendars. This is according to Content Marketing Institute. I'm sure Mike has seen this in his own world, but let's talk about one of the questions we shared on today's tweet chat, and that's question number 3, which is, if you build it, they will come. Agree or disagree? Do you think that you should create content to cater to your audience, or trust that your content will draw your audience in? Is one method more efficient than the other? What are the best ways to find and then promote engagement within your tribe? I feel like, Mike, this is an area you know very, very well. We see Evan, actually, he joins us from the UK, and he did share here that if you don't provide what's wanted and whatnot, that you got to figure out a way to really resonate with your audience. I want to say quick hello to James and everybody else that's joining us live as well. Mike, this is something you've done really well. You obviously specialize in long form blogging content, right? Which has a very long shelf life in many respects. Now you're also talking about live streaming. Terms of your content, how much of your content is driven towards your audience or your community, and how much of it maybe has nothing to do with that and going in a different direction that you think your audience would also still find value in?
I would say you really need to focus on creating content that serves your audience. Anytime you stray from that and go in a direction where it's either really just because you're interested or passionate about a particular topic and you don't know if anybody else cares, or maybe you think it's something they need to be interested in, they need to care about this topic, but again, you don't know if they actually are interested in that particular topic. There's a risk there in both those scenarios. A couple of years ago, when GDPR was coming out of Europe, this massive legislation out of Europe that controlled how you could contact European consumers and how you could store their data, I knew American businesses needed to know what GDPR was. That doesn't mean they cared, right? So I took a risk and I invested a lot of time in creating content about it. In fact, Stephanie and I did a live show talking about the massive article that I created about that topic. Did people necessarily care about it? Maybe, maybe not. They needed to know about it. That was a risk, though, on my part, that could have just totally fallen flat. And unfortunately, as a content creator, that happens. We'll think people want to know or should know about a particular topic, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. But one of the interesting things that you just kind of touched on a moment ago that we didn't really get into in the chat was how businesses pivoted last year as a result of change in the platform, change in the environment, in this case, change because of the pandemic. A lot of businesses successfully considered how the needs of their audience changed almost overnight because of the pandemic, because of lockdowns. So businesses that were, for instance, in the SaaS space, like AgoraPulse, where I work, we were creating content that was specifically geared to a new breed of remote workers, social media employees who, up until March of last year, probably were reporting to an office and going into work every single day. And now they found themselves working remotely and had never done that before. Many, many, many other businesses tried to help in that way. And this is one of the ways that businesses can resonate with their audience, whether we're going into a pandemic or not, is to think about, what can I talk about that will be helpful and informative and will resonate with my audience and doesn't necessarily sell, doesn't necessarily have a direct connection to my brand. Maybe it's tangential. Maybe it's a topic where, like in Agorapulse's case, I can be talking to social media managers and providing social media managers with tons of relevant, helpful information that doesn't necessarily have to do with actually managing social media. That's one of the really important considerations, I think, that brands need to take when they're coming up with a plan for their content, whether it's for the next month, quarter, or year. What can we talk about that will resonate with our audience? Sure, there's opportunities to interject some pieces of content, some ideas, some thought leadership pieces perhaps, where we don't know if our audience cares. This is something we care about, and we think you should care about it too. And you can see how that goes. You can float those ideas, but focus on the stuff that you know will resonate with your audience.
Yes, focus on things that will resonate with you. Absolutely true. I think, Evan had made a good point on the tweet chat too, that sometimes you got to also, stretch your muscles, your creative muscles a little bit, and don't feel like you need to stick within your box. And, through the years, I've heard over and over again, well, why does a financial person need to do A, B, C? Aren't you supposed to be doing, whatever you're supposed to be doing? And I thought to myself, that's really interesting that you would say that. But before being who we are in our careers, we're also human, right? So we have different interests and passions as well. And I think the longer that you continue to get to know your audience and your community, you can take some of those risks because there's that trust that you've built and you've earned, that they know that you're coming from a place where you're looking to share. And what you said, I thought was really powerful. Of it might not completely be relevant to Agorapulse and what Agorapulse does, right? Which is social media management. But it was creating value to your audience, and that goodwill will benefit you one way or the other. Like, it's called like social business karma, right? If you treat others well, it will come back to you, whether it be in one form or the other. And that's really sort of my philosophy and passion when we create the tweet chat as well as the show. It's not completely an equals A relationship, but it doesn't need to be, because if you continue to build value, you earn the right at some point, some way down the road, to be able to ask for business. And I think more businesses should sort of take those risks and maybe invest that time, because so often we see the Mike Altons of the world and the Stephanie Liu's of the world and everybody, the Lee Audens of the world, are like, wow, they have so much social media influence, right? They must be doing so well. But you haven't seen the 10 plus years that they've been been struggling along, trying to figure out how to provide you more value. So I'm really glad that you brought that up, Mike. I just want to build on that. So thank you so much for that. Creating content is a successful strategy for businesses who are pursuing new business. In fact, we know, because recently there was a study that showed that 70% of the organizations surveyed believe that their content results were more successful in 2020 than in previous years, with only 8% of those surveyed believing that their efforts regressed. This is once again also from Content Marketing Institute. Now, let's just talk about 2020. I mean, 2020 wasn't all just the pandemic. It was also so much pent up stories that came out, feelings that came out, where there's a lot of discussion about race, right? About diversion, about diversity, about minorities, and it's all these different things that, were always there perhaps, but because they were being focused, we saw more of that. And I think a lot of brands decided that they couldn't really escape this. They had to make a decision on how they were going to go with this, And so I think a lot of brands are thinking like, this is actually coincides with question number 5 that we had on our tweet chat. And by the way, for those of you who didn't join our tweet chat, you want to join Twitter, get on Twitter, follow the search for #WinnieSun. The questions are all still there. You can go ahead and answer those questions too. Make sure to tag each of your answers, #WinnieSun, and you can join the conversation as well. But this is what we want to talk about. What do we post now? Like, how do you come up with ideas for new content and social media strategies? Mike, you create so much relevant, really, really meaty content. And so I actually question this often myself too. Like, how does Mike keep up? How does he decide which direction to take? And I think, Mike, this will be good inspiration for other businesses that are thinking this as well. And I think, regardless of what industry you're at, you know that it's important that you get the word out about your business. And maybe some of you are thinking, maybe I should create some content. So where do we start, Mike?
Well, this is why I love that you have a live conversation after the tweet chat, because the context of the answers and the context of the discussion changes, right? It was just a vanilla question. How do we come up with content? Well, my answer was very vanilla as well. As well, ask your audience, have discussions on social media, and see what questions they come up with, and then you answer those questions. But I like the context here now of last year, not just the pandemic, but the conversations around diversity. And this is something that your business, every business, should be participating in. And a lot of businesses are like, oh, I don't want to get political. This is about society. This is about culture. This is about being inclusive with our audience. And some of the other statistics that anyone could find at this point is that audiences overwhelmingly responded positively when brands took a position on social issues, not political, social issues. So how do we do that? Because this goes into the question you just asked. Well, how do we create content, right? Well, how do we decide what we want to create on social media and in blog content and so on? Well, I would consider, going back to what I said a moment ago, how can we create content that resonates with our audience that potentially has an impact on a societal issue that's important to us? I'll give you a personal example, because I've got these other side blogs that I work on. And so one of the rocks that I'll die on is that women and other minorities have not gotten a fair shake when it comes to speaking at events, because that's something that's very near and dear to me. I speak at events, I go to social media marketing events, and I see overwhelmingly, still to this day, white men speaking at and getting paid more to speak at major events and conferences, particularly in the marketing space. And it's ridiculous. So I wrote an article a couple of years ago still, first of all, questioning why this is still the case today, and listing dozens of supremely qualified, incredible female and minority speakers. I mean, you've mentioned Stephanie a couple of times. She's a female, she's a minority. She is literally the best speaker I have ever met in my entire life. And I've seen some of the best speakers of our generation. There is no reason, no excuse why she shouldn't be a keynote speaker at every incredible marketing event that there is. So those are the kinds of things that businesses can do. I do these quarterly summits for Agorapulse, and I've made it a point not only to make sure that the majority of my speakers are women and minorities, but we're actually talking about diversity, inclusion, and accessibility, and these other kinds of issues that for some are maybe a touchy topic, but for others, these are topics that you need to know about. This kind of touches on the other thing I talked about, right? Where sometimes you got to create content that maybe your audience needs to know about. You don't know if they want to know about it. I don't know if my audience wants to know about how to be more diverse on LinkedIn. I don't know if they want to know about how to make sure their Instagram content is accessible. I don't care. I don't care if they want to know that. I'm going to push that content into it anyways. So I had Alexa Heinrich just last quarter talking about how to make sure that your Instagram posts are more accessible, because that's important. So those are ways I think that businesses can think about the content that they need to create, think about the audience they're trying to reach, and at the same time, kind of fold in some of these societal topics and discussions. And how can we take a stand as a brand? How can we be part of this conversation in a constructive way? That's what I would challenge everyone to think about.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really powerful, and especially in today's society, like you said, there are certain common truths that we all agree on, and that's to treat each other right and treat each other fairly and treat each other with humanity. So, like you said, at some point, you can't care so much if some people disagree with you. There should be that sort of North Star that each of us has when we lead not only our own brands, but that of our companies and our employees and our audience, and most importantly, our children are watching. So we want to be good examples and stewards of that. And I think one of the things that I love about your content is, is making sure that those those decisions are made. And the thing that I've been finding too, especially of recent, there's been more of a proactive decision to bring in more inclusiveness. And like you mentioned, a lot of these marketing conferences, I'm speaking at a really large live streaming summit that's going to happen next month. And it's great because now I'm being made a keynote speaker. And I think in the past it would have been, well, why should I know this person and that person for years? And so it's just easy for me to go there. But now it's actually encouraging, and I think it's a challenge, but it's encouraging to see people go outside of the typical, and hopefully at one point then going outside the typical becomes the typical, where we actually get to meet new people, new voices, new minds who are going to teach us new things. And so that's exciting. Let's talk about this too. So people are actually spending more money on content. So this is interesting. Content marketers have increased spending on content creation more so than other areas of content marketing in the last 12 months, with an increase in creation seeing a 50% increase in budget in this area. This was as of a survey shared by Benchmark's Budgets and Trends report here in North America. So people are spending more on creating content. The question is, for a lot of people who are watching, they might be small to mid-sized businesses, right? On a limited budget, where do you begin? You talked about blogging. You certainly talked about live streaming. You talked about posts as well. You talked about conferences. Mike, I'm sure this is sort of a constant discussion you've had with business owners, right? Where do you advise? Where do you think would make most sense to start?
The first thing I would do is think about, as a business owner, what is my strength? Or as the person who's going to be responsible for creating the content, what is my strength? Is it writing? Is it doing video? Is it speaking, right? We can potentially do audio only content. Those are basically the three choices, right? You can write, you can create video, you can create audio only. That's kind of the first determination, because if we want to save money, then we have to build off of and rely on our own strengths. And hopefully you can identify as someone watching right now with one of those things. I'm a good writer, or at least I think I can write, or I don't mind talking to the camera, or I've got a good mic and I like talking into the mic and I have a lot to say. That's the first determination. The second thing is to think about who we're talking to as an audience. That's always got to be part of the conversation and the thought process. Who are we trying to reach with our content? Because that might inform a little bit the kind of content that you're going to create. And then I would say, particularly for businesses who are on a budget, I would look for other influencers in your industry, whatever your industry is, and look for ways to connect with and partner with them. And the good thing here with influencers is that it doesn't always have to be a paid influencer marketing type of campaign. It's not what I'm looking for. What we're looking for is ways that we can create content and bring them in. So a great example from the written world is a blog roundup. Lee is famous for these. I've done a ton of these where I send out a question, a couple questions, very brief, open-ended questions to a bunch of people in my industry, and anyone can do this in their respective industries, and you get their responses and you publish those responses as a single article. And the thing that makes this a beautiful piece of content is that when you ask the influencer for their answer to that question, you also ask for obviously their name, their website, their title, their Twitter handle, their preferred image, and their preferred bio. And you make sure all that information's wrapped up inside the roundup post, right? So you'd have my name, my information, and the answer to my question, and then your name, Wendy, your information and the answer to your answer to the question. And you do those in succession, and you get like 10 or 15 people to participate in that particular piece of content. And now you've got a really long article with 10 or 15 influencers who participated in that. And when you share that out to social media, you tag them all. And they're all going to comment. They're all going to share it. Some of them will go so far as to email it out to their audience and so on. Some will just retweet it. It'll be a little bit different with each one. But you'll definitely reach a much, much larger audience. And the only cost to you as the content creator was your time to come up with the question, to distribute it to influencers, and then to compile it all into a single article. So that's what I would recommend doing. You can do it via video, you can do it via audio interviews, those kinds of things. But that's how I would leverage other people's audiences to grow my own content in a very affordable way.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant, Mike. Thank you so much for being so generous and sharing with us on that today. Let's jump to one last question, because I know Mike's got to run too here, and that is question 11, which is, what are the most effective power moves everyone should make immediately to boost their SEO? I feel like, Mike, this is a question people are asking over and over and over again. SEO seems to be just like sort of that dragon or unicorn that nobody quite can crack. So we're relying on you, Mike. What are your thoughts here?
Oh my gosh. I need a whole nother show to answer this thoroughly.
We can arrange that.
We can arrange that. That's right. Well, here's what I was trying to say as briefly as possible. The secret here, and it's the worst kept secret, is to have a specific keyword phrase that you have actually researched. You've taken the time to plug it into Google Keyword Planner, which is free, or SEMrush, which I love, but it's a little pricey. It's going to be like $100 a month. You plug that keyword in there, and you actually verify before you create the content that people actually care about this particular topic. The example I gave in our tweet chat today was I created a product called a blog planner several years ago, and I thought it was great. People have been asking me for some kind of tool to help them plan out their content. So I created a blog planner and I put it on sale and I sold it, and it was okay. But then about a year later, I was wanting to optimize and create some more content and drive people into this product. So I went into SEMrush and did a little research, and turns out nobody searches for blog planner, like nobody. They're searching for blogging planner, which sounds similar to you and I, but from a search engine perspective, from Google's perspective, that's totally different. Blog and blogging are not the same word. They don't even technically mean the same thing. A blog is a thing, blogging is a verb. So I changed everything to blogging planner. And this is where some of the secret sauce comes in. You change the title, you make sure it's like in an image alt tag, you make sure it's in the heading, and so on. You go through all these steps, which they're not hard. There's no real magic to it. In fact, there's a bit of a science to it. If you have WordPress, install Yoast's SEO for WordPress plugin, and they'll tell you, hey, Mike, if you want to optimize for Blogging Planner, you just type in Blogging Planner where it asks you underneath the content, and it'll tell you, oh, you need it in the title. You need it in your meta description tag. You need it in at least one image alt tag. You do those things, and it'll start to rank. Now, you're not going to achieve a number one ranking with one piece of content on one particular topic. That's where you need to follow my content pyramid approach, where you have like 13 pieces of content that are all linking together and linking up to one really, really important piece of content. But the point there is to have a single keyword phrase that you are actively writing about and targeting with all of your content. That's what'll get it ranked.
I love that. Let me just say, I'm sure you got way more on that topic. We could totally do a whole show on this, but that was powerful. And how you shared it was so important. It's like sometimes it seems so simple, right? The word blog versus blogging, but it's not that simple, because the difference can be tremendous in terms of how many people actually find your content, because the way that you search might be vastly different than the majority of people who are on the internet searching for. So really powerful. Thank you so much, Mike. Let me ask you this. For people who want to get to know you more, where should they go, and what do you prefer? How do you prefer people contact you?
Yeah, I'm all over the place, but in the context of learning how and learning more about blogging, bloggingbrute.com is the best place to go. Everything that I have said, you will find, and you will find even much more. Like if you do a search on content pyramids, you'll learn all about content pyramids on the Blogging Brute. You can follow me on all the socials. I'm at Blogging Brute, and you can message me directly. Anyone can if you have more questions.
I love that. Thank you, Mike. Thank you always for being so generous and so kind and so polite to everybody that knows you. As a reminder, definitely give Mike a follow. Follow him on all the different platforms. Keep in touch with everybody that you see in the show, because we bring these experts to you because they're good people, and they're people that you'll want to know, not only for just personally because they're great people, but they can definitely, something that Mike writes about, something that Mike shares is going to resonate to you and could be coming to you at just that right time to help with you and your business. And as a reminder, so you can find full episodes of Level Up with Winnie Sun on NASDAQ, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And let's just say we're coming to another platform to you very, very soon. I hope to share that with you in a few weeks. But in the meantime, be well. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Definitely do me a favor, share this show, let people know. And if there's so much value that came from Mike Alton, definitely make sure to share that with them as well. Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. I hope that you have a
Thank you
wonderful
for having
day.
me. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show too. Very, very important topic.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mike. Take care.